Good morning. Well, good morning, good evening, however you want to call it. This is Jason Dean for another impromptu video here for Film Fanatic. I typically, when I make videos, I typically do them, in the time period of the morning. When I first started doing videos, which was like 2 or 3 years ago now, I was doing them at night, and it was always on through Facebook Live videos. That's usually what I was doing, and I would typically do them at night after I used to work at night, and I would come home, crack open a beer, take a shower, and then do a video. And I'd usually do them at like 11 o'clock, 10:30 at night. Now I typically do them in the morning. So, but now I hadn't been able to do as many. Still, I take that back. I still do videos, try to do them all the time. I love doing them. And I uploaded about 3 or 4 videos recently. And I appreciate, people checking them out and commenting, so it's always a blast. But every now and then, I hear something or I watch something. I typically watch a movie every night, or, I have some thoughts about a movie or something that's going on in the film industry. And it will just like be in my head, and where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to make a video, and I'm not really thinking about the time of when I'm shooting, or, all those kinds of things. So tonight is a video about that. This is kind of about a subject for me that does mean a lot, and it's something I hear about, and this show is about Godzilla movies, essentially. And, they're the new Godzilla X, which is the new American monster movie that just is a new Godzilla movie that just came out or is coming out this weekend. Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire. I'm not even really sure how to pronounce the title. There was a movie that came out, Godzilla vs. Kong, and then there was an American Godzilla movie that came out before that. There was the King Kong Skull Island that came out a few years back, and there's been a lot, and they're making a lot of these American movies all the time. And then the one going back even further was the Godzilla movie with Matthew Broderick. And for when it comes to Godzilla movies, I'm like a hardcore Toho supporter. I'm all about the old school Toho movies. That studio and all of the Godzilla films mean the world to me. Those are amazing films, movies of my childhood. They kind of introduced me to kind of the fantasy genre, really. And so, I grew up like millions of other kids watching those on TV. They were always on television as a kid, all the old school ones. And, and I did 2 shows on the latest Toho movie that came out, Godzilla Minus One. And that came out last year. And I think that movie is kind of a masterpiece. Like, that movie is amazing. It really reminds me, I love all of the Godzilla movies. I think, they're all amazing. My favorite one has kind of always been the original one that came out in the 50s. It's very dark, and it's way more, it's kind of more of a serious movie. And it deals with, kind of environmental issues in a lot of ways. But it's such an amazing movie, and I love all of the other ones that came out before, or I should say after that, in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Those are the best ones. Those are just amazing movies. But I always go back to the first one as being probably my favorite. But I have to say, after seeing Godzilla Minus One, it's just such an incredible movie, and even the one that came out a few years back, Shin Godzilla, is just amazing. And basically, Shin Godzilla was one of those movies that really motivated me to, start buying more Godzilla movies. I don't really have a whole lot. As much as I love the old school Toho movies, I don't own a lot, and I need to buy all of those on Blu-ray at some point. That's one of my goals. My next venture to when I go to Bull Moose is I'm gonna try to really, take some stock in buying some Godzilla movies because they're the shit. But in regards to a lot of these American movies, I can't really stand them. I kind of liked the one that came out, the Godzilla movie that came out a few years back. I kind of like that film. But then now when I watch that movie, it's one of those things where I'm like, what was I thinking? Like that movie is just really awful. And the other films that have come out since then, I just think I don't understand, like, because time and time again, when all of these movies come out, I see all these people and talk, critics, mostly critics, which I'm always like kind of astounded by. But and I just watched a review, which really kind of was the motivating factor for me to make this video. And I just watched a review on Godzilla X Kong, the New Empire that's coming out. I think it opened this weekend. I have no desire to see it at all. But one of the biggest criticisms that I've heard of all of these movies, and one of the biggest things that I have of why I think most of these movies are really awful, pretty much all of them, is that there's no, like, it's basically a vehicle for just the monster battle scenes, and that there's no characterization, the acting or the cast and the writing, it just basically acts as like they're like these cheerleaders. They don't really have anything to offer as a character. There's no, you don't care about them. They're just faceless people on the screen. And there's no, like, it's all so heavy CGI laden, and it's so over the top, but there's like zero characters or characterizations. There's no people you actually care about. But time and time again, I see these movies being propped up and talked about, even tonight, where it's still the same thing of where they're saying that these people that are making these movies, these companies that are making these American Godzilla movies, they are continually using the same formula where the backstory, the characters, the actors that they hire are just all secondary. They're just used as to kill time, essentially, on the screen. And I'm just like, but yet at the same time, a lot of these reviews and reviewers are kind of like saying, well, these movies are still awesome, even though it has no, like, real value to it, and there's virtually no story. There's nothing that you care about the entire time, but yet you should still go see this movie because it's still really entertaining. And that you have to really kind of dumb down your experience as a film fan in order to enjoy it. And it's like this, I continually see that with all of these Godzilla movies that have been coming out. There's like 5 or 6 of them in the last 5 years or 10 years. These big, overstuffed, big, giant, bloated Godzilla American movies. And I'm just like, are people really that ignorant? Or are these critics really that ignorant and are going to really play that card? That people don't want anything that has a little bit of depth or a little bit of value? And it's like, I'm not talking about like that I want fucking Shakespeare. No, I don't, I don't expect, it's a monster movie. I don't expect it to be like like the caliber of like a David Mamet play or something. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. I want to be entertained, but I still want to be, into the characters that I'm seeing and that I'm experiencing for those 2 or 3 hours. I want to care about what's happening. I want to have empathy towards them. I want to be behind some of these characters, and none of these movies have that. I feel like there's no value in them, but yet these critics are still like propping these movies up. That, well, if you just go in with your blinders, these are still awesome movies. And I'm just like, what? Like, really, are they going to continually play that card? And I just think they're just doing such a disservice. Like, in some ways, it's okay to call a spade a spade. It's okay. Monster movies, are just, they're not all just stupid. Like, no, there's like great, I think most of the Toho movies, there's an element of like a human quality to them, and you care about what's going on. Yeah, they're entertaining and it's fun and exciting, but there's a little bit of depth to them, especially with, say, well, Godzilla minus one is a prime time example. Like, has such a human quality to it, and it's set. I feel like that movie is so great on so many levels, and I'm just like, I don't understand why. Like, why can't any of these executives in big Hollywood can't, like, learn some lessons from Godzilla minus one? Like, again, you don't, as a fan of these movies, I'm not asking for myself to be, transcended by some, like, by an emotional, like an extreme or transit. I'm not asking for a transcendental experience. It doesn't, like, again, it doesn't have to be Shakespeare. It doesn't have to be super art house. It doesn't have to be high art, even, for that matter. But I want to care about what the fuck is going on the big screen. Top to bottom. That's not asking much from an audience. And the thing that I was so blown away with when I saw Godzilla minus one, which came out in 2023, and I saw it in the theater. I just saw that it was released on Blu-ray, and I definitely need to buy it. The thing that was so amazing about that, and I was so taken back by, was that the level of how emotional that movie was, and how it really was. The script was so well done, the characters were so well fleshed out, and it's a high level caliber movie. Outside of it being just a kick-ass monster movie, it really has some depth. I think I think it almost has more of a higher quality in that vein than probably all of the Godzilla movies. I think it definitely raises the bar, and it made for a really exceptional film going experience. And so, but when I look at all of the Toho movies, they have, they're not quite as high as, say, with the detail as far as the emotional resonance that story has. But there is resonance with those movies. There is you are empathetic to the characters. You care about if someone dies or if someone lives. You have characters you root for. And of course, Godzilla being the main focus. Like, there's an emotional quality there. And so, all I'm asking for as being a fan of Godzilla is, like, come on, people. Like, do you really think, when it comes to the big budget executives and CEOs of our world that are making these, like, ridiculously insane, movies that are just so bloated and so over the top as far as their budgets go, like, aren't they aware of Toho, or aren't they aware of Godzilla minus one, which was, the only Toho movie in history that won an Academy Award? And it got a lot of praise. It was the most successful movie in the entire studio. The studio has been around for, like, almost 60 years. I mean, come on. Like, I just don't get it. And it just feels like, I don't know what their relationship is to that, and why they can't look to those films as a source of inspiration, saying, well, no, we can like actually put out a quality monster movie. Like, why can't, and not assume that everyone who's going to buy a ticket is dumb, for all intents and purposes, dumb, and is brainless. And they only want one thing. They just want a scene or scenes of where they want to see monsters smash things. Like, who doesn't love that? But you need to have some shred of a script, a story, characters you care about. They can't just simply be put on there as like pieces, to kind of somehow move the story along. And it seems like that's the reason I can't stand these newer Godzilla movies, especially the American ones, because the scripts are so formulaic, they're so generic, they're so ridiculous. The characters are all incredibly annoying. On one hand, they do hire good actors, but the scripts are just... I just feel like every time you watch one of these like big bloated American Godzilla movies, the general story is so secondary. So it's like, I've seen all of them, and you can't... What I find, it's almost... because of that, it's so hard to get through them. It's so hard because they are all like pretty long films. But yet it's so... the stories are just so ham-handed. They're so like cliche. They're cut from the same cloth. There's nobody's taking a chance, as far as what they're going to write or try to indoctrinate into the script. There's no human quality. There's no heart and soul to any of those movies. So I'm just like flabbergasted as to why they just insist on putting out the same dumb, formulaic, paint by numbers product. I just don't understand that. And that's one thing, but to see critics, and even people that I like as critics, still propping up a lot of these, terrible movies. I was in the theater, I went to the movies a few weeks ago, and I went with some friends and we saw Dune 2, which was spectacular, just an amazing film. And I did a review on that. But one of the trailers that they had was for this new Godzilla King Kong movie. And I'd heard about it, and I was just like, I saw a little bit of a trailer or clip, and I'm like, this is exactly, Skull Island all over again, or any of these other brainless Godzilla American movies that have come out. At one point, I have to say, I actually liked the American Godzilla movie that came out, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And then I hadn't watched it in a while, and I sat down and I watched it, and I'm just like, what was I thinking? This movie's trash. This is trash. Why am I wasting my time? And I took it out, and I've never seen it since. And I have no desire, because there are about 80 other Godzilla movies I would rather watch. All the Toho films. And especially these newer Toho films are just, spectacular. Shin Godzilla is amazing. And I just don't understand why that keeps happening. Hollywood is always complaining about how they can't get people, in the seats and keep people, like, when they're competing with people who are only getting their media through streaming, and they're constantly battling that in the studios. And so many movies have tanked because of that. Some movies have been very, very successful, but it's really affected the whole model. And I'm like, okay, you want to make cost-effective movies that have some quality, some depth, and that will actually make money, and that will like have some kind of substance, and could be a movie that people will want to see again. I doubt anybody is wanting to see any of these movies again, these American movies. I doubt that it's like, it's a bunch of fucking fireworks going off, and then you forget about it, It's like when you go to for the 4th of July, you go see a fireworks display, and then, most of the time it's okay or whatever. Occasionally you see a really good one, but you forget about it, and you never want to, like, think about it really again. And I feel like that's how brainless a lot of these movies are. You're not going to, it's in one ear, out the other. And I doubt that there's an audience of people who are like, oh, I can't wait to see Skull Island for the fifth or sixth time. It's just, I don't understand it. But why can't these studios look at what Toho has been able to do so successfully, and especially with these newer movies, of like just making, God forbid, a fucking quality monster movie? Anyway, that's all I'm talking about. That's all I needed to talk about and get off my chest. So thanks a lot, and we will see you next time. Peace.